Hi WorldTempus family, we're a bit far from our headquarters in Geneva today, and that's because we're in Singapore at LVMH Watch Week 2023, where we're just about to go inside to speak to Fabrizio Buonamassa and Antoine of Bulgari to discover a little bit more about what went behind the new watches of 2023 for Bulgari. Guys, it's so amazing to be here. We've just seen some brilliant pieces from Bulgari, putting the brand in a sparkling position to kick off the new year. One thing I've noticed about Bulgari is that towards the beginning of the year, you always kind of launch some of your most sparkling pieces. And I love it that you show such exuberance so early in the year. You're not saving anything or holding back. Is this a bit of a product strategy for Bulgari we start with a bang, we start with the best?
Ciao Suzanne. Happy New Year. For Bulgari, the best is yet to come.
That's a very strong hint that I'm going to be picking up on later. But Antoine, why don't you take us down this path?
For Antoine, a bit less, but from a creative point of view,
No, Fabrizio's right. We don't hold things with the fear that we won't be able to do better afterwards. So, of course, there is with the new way to introduce products to you guys, to the public, which is more frequent. We obviously organize ourselves in order to propose something that is more coherent, but also more focused. So we don't show many products at once, like we used to do in the old times when there was one moment in the year and you would see all the launch from March, April to the following year. Now we have the opportunity to have more moments to introduce products, and of course we can, let's say, convey stronger messages because we know we will have another moment to present another product. But it's true that we don't hold projects with the fear that we may not have anything to present in 6 months or because there are still ongoing projects.
Yes. You don't believe in starting slow.
We don't believe in starting slow. We never believe something that I've experienced several times in my career. It's the fact that sometimes people don't dare to introduce a product because it looks so much better than some products that may be more expensive. And why not? I mean, the future should be better. So if we launch a product that is better at a more reasonable price, then the products that are more expensive, we'll renew them and we'll relaunch new versions that will be even better. So there is probably an attitude that is very positive towards the future. So we are not scared about the future, as Fabrizio was saying. So that's why we're coming with sparkling pieces in early this year, like we did last year. Also because it takes us back to our roots as a jeweler.
Exactly. I love this sort of more, well, I would say stronger emphasis on sort of more feminine targeted timepieces towards the beginning of the year. We see a lot of color, explosions of sort of this exuberance as linked to the heritage as jeweler, as you said. And, it's like beginning of the year, let's have some fireworks, It's a bit
still
like
Christmassy.
That. Yeah, we're still all in the mood. Let's not deceive ourselves. We're all still in the mood for a bit of champagne now and then.
Exactly.
Fabrizio, while these pieces are, we're kind of familiar with them in a way, they're not new collections or new reference in that sense. But why did you decide to explore these new variations and sort of design interpretations?
Because for us, we love to each time to see the things from a different point of view. We already know the case, we already know this beautiful bracelet or some other pieces, but each time we try to find a different key, a different way to talk about femininity. As you can see, these amazing dials that we have in front of us, it's absolutely stunning. It's not a brand new product, but it's a brand new product in terms of development. Each time that we change this kind of very heavy components, you have to start from scratch, more or less. And just to change a dial and a bezel, you have to work, the product development team have to work for more than 1 year sometimes.
Explain us a bit more about why does it, because not everyone may understand why it takes 1 year just to change a dial, for example.
First of all, we have to find the right idea. And when we find the right idea, we have to find the right savoir-faire. But in the same moment, we start to involve in the process the product development team. And the marketing team is already on board. So we start the discussion starting from the drawings and starting from the idea that we already share. And after we have to find the right suppliers, internal supplier or external supplier. And this moment, honestly, is not so easy. So just for this common, let me say, process, just to change a dial, to change the stones, to find the right color of the stones, to cut the stones in the right way, you have to wait sometimes 6-7 months just to see a portion of a dial.
I think that's fantastic. You've given us a very sort of practical insight into something that
You have
people
to
see very...
You have to imagine the results, because sometimes it's not possible to make this kind of dial exactly to make the final prototype, because it's difficult to find the stone. So we start to have a portion of a dial. To say if the gradient of the stones is okay, if we are happy with the colors. It's a very, very long steps, and we are on board the gemological office and purchasing for stones. Honestly, is a huge, huge work. It's just a dial, but I think it's more than 100 people involved in the process for a dial.
To give you some detailed examples, for a basic dial, which means just a surface treated specifically, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks just to produce. Of course, this means that beforehand you organize the plan, you found the color, the texture, and then you've got several variations, because we never validate the product like these ones without looking at prototypes. And of course, you never have only one version of the prototype. But the 6 weeks is only one very little part, because the production itself is just again the treatment of the surface. If you include the stones, then before this process you do have the selection of the stones, the color, as you said. So you supply the stone, you negotiate with the buyers, you validate the stones. Today, as you know, we have a longer lead time, because we are checking also the provenance of the stones. We have a huge responsibility on that field as well.
A very strong concern now for
consumers. Which is obviously, it's been a while now, but the constraints become more and more, and of course it's becoming more and more difficult to source the products. And so when you're talking about jewelry watches, the length of the lead time is really, really long. And it's not a matter of just trying to emphasize the complexity. The complexity is real.
Yes. No, I know it sounds like a real challenge, but I also know that you guys at Bulgari really love your challenges. So
but there is challenges, and also let's be clear. Fabrizio and his team, they are demanding. They don't necessarily. There is this moment, and it's important that the creative direction validate the color, the nature of the stones. It's not just a process like this. It's sometimes complex with the people from the operations, because of course there is more and more pressure, because we don't move the date of the LVMH Watch Week, and at some point we have to present the product. So we have those sometimes frustrations that we need to compromise between the quality sometimes, or sometimes we have to postpone the launches. So it's always an ongoing decision. But this is the reality of our actions today.
Yes, but you've raised a really important point, actually, that it's not just about creating something beautiful, it's also about ensuring that you can produce this level of quality assurance, no matter how small or big the production is.
And when we talk about jewelry watches, it's even more difficult, because we have to talk about the quality of the stones, the color of the stones. So sometimes we refuse the stones because we are not happy about the color.
And this is perhaps not so easy to control as, say, mechanical parts, for example.
Absolutely. And even on the mechanical side, we have there is also scarcity in let's say the talent of people.
Yeah, it's limited.
It's limited, and as much as we are experiencing the exceptional demand for our product, we don't have the capacity to go faster. And if we have more demand on our production, we take resources from the development side as well. We can't take the people. I mean, we have sometimes to make a decision whether to use some of our teams or tools for prototyping or for producing.
This might be more of a design rather than a strategic question, or maybe it's a bit of both. But in terms of storytelling, how do you decide how to keep that balance between the familiarity that consumers have with these collections, but also at the same time telling new stories with them in new interpretations, new colors, new...
Sometimes the new story comes from the savoir-faire, it's a different savoir-faire. This 2-dial, for example, is unbelievable. It's absolutely difficult to produce. The quantity of the stones, the color of the stones, the gradient is it's let me say, it's a nightmare, but each time we find a different way to tell you a different story to different client. As you can see, the two watches are totally different. With the bracelet and with the strap, the watch changed completely the way to be on the wrist. And this is very important because we have loyal clients, but we have even more and more new clients that comes to try and to get Bulgari products in our boutique. This is very important for us. That's why, let me say that from the beginning, I never satisfied, because each time we have to find a way to tell to new client different story. On the other hand, we have to take care about the loyal client. Bulgari is not a common brand. It's not, let me say, we don't have a vintage approach. It's a modern brand. In the DNA, it was a contemporary brand from the beginning. That's why each time we try to reinvent the brand through the products.
So, like, say in 10 years' time, looking back on these watches, is there something in terms of the design or perhaps the themes, the approach that would help us to identify this as a 2023 watch, not a 2022 watch or a 2024 watch? This is
a very good question. In terms of design, for me, the most important part is the proportions and the way to play with forms and shapes. It seems that it's a Bulgari product forever. We don't have just one time frame, because otherwise just now it's easier to say that it was the green dial trend. So now you can see that this watch has come from 2023 because it was the green. In Bulgari watches you see that each time we use different shapes, but with exactly the same attention on the Bulgari proportions and Bulgari way to play with the pure shapes. This watch, for example, it's very easy because you have just triangular elements, but with the same triangular elements that you find on the bracelet. The two watches are totally different.
Because if you say that we're taking really an artisanal and artistic approach towards timepieces, you know, artists, they go through different eras. You can look at a piece and say, this was made during this time, this was made during this era.
Maybe the decorative parts of the watch could be easily recognizable. But the shape is a round shape watch with an amazing bracelet. Even this one is a round shape watch with the jewelry that turns around. But you can, maybe the way to play with some specific color scheme is more easy to say that come from a specific moment. But honestly, we are a very unique color scheme in our DNA. You can see in our heritage collection, we love to play with violet, we love to play with different shades of red, of green. We love to mix and match different colors, different material, different cut stones together to generate a new aesthetics. This is a bit the brand DNA.
The storytelling that you can recognize.
Yes. And if you are able to talk with the DNA and not to talk about the shapes, you are able to talk about different products forever. If you are obliged in a jail about a certain shape, certain bracelet, let me say that is more difficult. This brand is absolutely unique because we have a lot of different signs, but now we are able to talk about proportions and shapes instead of a round shape watch or a rectangular watch or a serpent. It's difficult to say which kind of this kind of case, which it's a drop shape is a
it's its own shape.
Yeah, it's a serpenty shape, yes.
You were saying about, you just mentioned how Bulgari, the brand, has so many signs, and I'm going to use that to take you back to something you said at the beginning, which is that there's very, very much more that we can look forward to in the rest of the year, and this is going to be a bit of a tricky question maybe, but looking at these watches, what can we identify at them that will help us to anticipate what's coming ahead in the rest of the year?
Tricky
for
question,
Bulgari?
difficult question. I leave the stage.
Yeah, thank you. Nothing.
It's for you.
You cannot anticipate the future from what you see now. There will be totally different perspectives. The beauty of this, I mean, there are so many specificities about Bulgari, but the one element also is the versatility. You've got collections that have their own identities that are very different from each other. So if we talk about jewelry watches now, we may talk about other collections in the future. So obviously, probably what I would add to your previous point, there is always this perspective about the new technology, the progress. As Fabrizio said, the best is yet to come, and it's probably a way for you in the future to date the products. not necessarily from a pure design perspective, but also from a technological perspective, where we continue to drive to improve or change our techniques to also to match some design perspective, like the Serpentis Editor-in-Infinity, Serpentis de Bulgari Infinity that you see here, where we managed to set the bracelet, which was never made like this, because we used a new technology. Actually, it's Fabrizio who found the partner who is helping us to do this, who helped us to let's say to create this technique, and this will be clearly dated because there was never a setting like this one before. So, and in the same, so probably what would be potentially connecting point between the different collections would be the level of technology that is being used in the different products, but it will be more the behind the scene, yes. The operating system in looking at large. Not only I'm not talking about the movement per se, but all the techniques that are behind the products that will date the products, or connect them. But don't try to find out what's going to come afterwards from what you see here.
It's different.
No, but this is amazing that this is something that, if I'm hearing you right, probably at the end of this year, the end of 2023, when we look back, we will be able to see that they all took this approach of being more advanced than before, of pushing the limits of technology, of taking really what's on the cutting edge, to be a bit more avant-garde than the previous generation, and that's possibly something we can look forward to. It's not much of a hint, but it's something. No, just to wrap up, and once again, like this has always been, it's amazing talking to the both of you, but here we are in Singapore. I know the both of you gentlemen love being here. For me, it goes without saying that I love being here, but experts often point to Singapore as being really a sort of leader and being very important, pivotal in terms of the global watch business. What would you say Singapore brings to the table specifically for Bulgari?
Well, the culture. The watch culture is stunning, but it's historical. You don't build it overnight.
I agree.
Here it's really this notion of collectors, usually you transmit your passion for watches to your sons, and it is really a father to son thing that you can see within families of collectors many times.
The transmission of values.
Transmission of values, but also an early teaching around watches. People, the kids are exposed to watches, they see it in the family, etc. So there is a culture. And this has been going on for generations in Singapore. I remember Singapore being the leading market for high horology in the 80s and the 90s. I mean, I don't remember the 80s, but I know of that. I'm sorry, I'm already old, but I don't want. But it was already the leading market, and it's not something that you lose. It's actually something that you even develop. So there is still this expertise that is really key, because if you succeed in this market, usually there are high chances that you will succeed in other markets afterwards.
It's really special. What about you, Fabrizio?
They're very cultivated. It's not just the collectors. They love beautiful watches with a very unique savoir-faire, with very specific features. It's not just to collect watches. First time I was in Singapore, I think, was more or less 10 years ago. And one of my first trip in Singapore, I had a meeting with the very important collectors. And it was unbelievable. It's very important even for the evolution of the ladies' watches, this kind of market, because it was just a quartz movement with some diamonds, and in a certain moment they start to develop high jewelry watches with the grand complication movement, and they start to appreciate around the world the mechanical movement on ladies' watches, thanks even to this market. So. It changed a lot. We have to say
Bulgari has played a part in this change.
Yes, exactly. It was just a niche, become a trend, and now it's a part of the market. But thanks to this kind of market, we have this kind of watches now.
Well, once again, thank you both so much. Antoine, Fabrizio, it's always a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much for sitting with us as we spoke to these wonderful, brilliant gentlemen. And don't forget to visit WorldTempus.com to read more about Bulgari and LVMH Watch Week 2023.